I kind of want to help you to do some real thinking on your own about this whole thing, because, and in giving my testimony and all, one of the things that I learned is that since God knows all things, and a lot of times we have a hard time trusting that, and God knows all things, and He controls all things. And like I say, it's real hard to trust that, but He does. And as I look back now, I'm coming up on 85 this month, and I tell you, when I look back and I look at all the different things, and I realize more and more that God prepares you for what's coming. And especially if you do your best to stay in His will. And He does let you know His will, sometimes not as soon as we'd like. But as long as you do your best to stay in His will, He will, you can trust that He's guiding you. And a lot of the things that are happening to you may not be good at the time, and it may actually hurt. And I mean, a lot of times hurts your heart, hurts your body, just tears you up sometimes. But when you can trust Him, you'll know that sometime down the road, you're going to be a help to somebody else because of it. You're going to be a tremendous, a lot better prepared for things that are coming up, things that come up, and it just makes a tremendous difference to know that since He's got control of all of it, and He really does care what happens to you, that He is preparing you. And of course, we're all being prepared for the big thing, to be up there with Him. And of course, it says no man can even think or can even understand all the good stuff that's coming up there in heaven. And He doesn't even try to explain it to us, because He said there's no way we're going to understand it. And it says neither has it come into the imagination, our imagination, and boy, do we have an imagination. But nothing like what He says. So it's funny, people go on about having a mansion and all that. Mansions are going to be nothing up there. But one of the things that I love so much about thinking about heaven is I know they talk about the streets of gold and gates of pearls and all kinds of stuff like that. But what really thrills me is that there's going to be complete understanding. There's going to be no kind of fear. There's no kind of pain. And no kind of distrust, jealousy, envy, or anything like that. And when someone says something to you, you know they're going to be totally sincere. And you're going to be totally sincere in everything you say. There won't be any guessing games up there about all that kind of stuff. And it's just, when you think about the fullness of relationships, much, much better than thinking about what kind of land or city or anything. And all those are going to be nice. It's going to be great. But I think the relationships are going to be the best. And so we're being prepared for all of that too. And so it's hard for us, but we need to not just tolerate it, but the Bible says to give thanks in all things. He doesn't say give thanks for all things, but in all things, give thanks. And if nothing else, you can say, thank you that it's not any worse.
Yeah.
And I remember, I've been through some times when I had terrible, terrible lower back pains, and Lord, am I ever going to come out of this? Am I ever going to get through this? And all this kind of stuff, and it would occur to me, well, thank you that it's not any worse. And I passed a few stones and all this kind of stuff, and boy, listen, it's no fun.
No.
But when you can think and say, well, all right, I'm being prepared. I don't know what this is all about, but you know, he's not going to give you anything more than you can handle. as long as you trusted him.
That's right.
So, I want to tell you that please be careful what you say around kids. Kids, they say little pictures have big ears, and people say that all the time, but a lot of times they don't really believe it, because a lot of times when kids are around, parents are talking, or different people are talking, adults, and they act like the kid's not going to hear a thing they say. Well, that sure wasn't true with me. I mean, when I was like 4 and 5 years old, I'd be down on the floor playing with toys and stuff like that, and people would say, they'd come in and visit and all, they'd say, talk to my mom and dad and say, well, what are you going to do with him? I knew good and well who they were talking about. And of course, you know, a lot of sighted kids, when they know you're talking about, if they know that you're talking about them, they look up at you. Well, I didn't, being blind, I didn't look up at them. So they had no idea I was listening to them at all. And they'd say, well, are you going to put him in a nursing home? Or, I mean, what are you going to do? Because he's never going to amount to anything. And I wanted to throw a toy at him or something. You think I don't hear that? What are you talking about? I wish you weren't grown up. I'd love to beat you up. But it just made me more determined. Well, okay, that was a bad thing, but you know what? It put some determination in that little heart of mine. I am going to do stuff. I am going to do things people think I can't do. And God really blessed that. So when I was 5 years old, the public schools were not equipped to take care of blind people at all. So they sent me 120 miles away down to a school for blind kids. Well, I'll tell you what, you take a 5-year-old away from his mama, and that was hard. Mom and dad, and home and everything I knew. All of a sudden, I was left high and dry in a dorm with 18 kids. I mean, there's 18 of us. And, you talk about tear my heart up. But there again, I was getting prepared for a lot of other stuff. I learned how to cope with other kids, learned how to cope with how to do things when you couldn't see. And the school was very well equipped to show us how to do a lot of stuff we didn't ever dream we could. And so going through the school, and I tell you what, clear up until I was 10 years old, I'd come home twice a year, come home for 3 months out of the summer and a couple of weeks out of Christmas. And outside of that, I was away from home. And so really it was kind of hard to get to know my brother and sister again and all their friends and all that kind of stuff. But, and every time I get ready to leave, man, I would swallow. I would just cry and cry. And of course, tore my poor mom up. But finally, when I got to be 10 years old, I got, all right, I'm tough. I'm not going to cry anymore. And I got really hard-hearted, like, and I'd hear about people having hard things, and I'd say, that's tough. That's just tough. And so I got real hard about it. But I learned a lot. I had to start when I was even 10 years old. I had to start. We didn't have any money and all kinds of stuff, so they'd put me on a train. I'd take off and go down to St. Louis on the train, and then get off the train. I had to walk a few blocks and go catch buses, and finally get out to the school. And people think, what, a 10-year-old doing that? Well, yeah, had to do it over and over, twice a year, and go on up. And then they took the train away, and then had to take more Greyhound bus, and Trailways bus, and all that kind of stuff. Well, I got good enough at it that they finally, there was a little guy that lived up quite a ways up above Hannibal, and their folks, they couldn't afford to drive all the way down there and all that, so they would bring our little guy down to Hannibal, and they'd give him to me, and I'd take him, and we'd start out on the train, on the buses, and so they let me take him back and forth. And That was actually fun. Scared that poor little guy to death when the train going around the curve and started tipping. He thought sure we were going to tip over. And all I had to show him and it was I had a lot of fun out of the whole thing. But all the time, that was preparing me for later. Because later on, after I got grown up, I had to take buses everywhere. And I mean, city buses, Greyhound bus, Trailways bus, all that kind of stuff. In fact, when Dee Dee and I got married and before our kids got old enough, we would take buses and go different places, especially when I was a school teacher for most of my life, about 25 years. But part of that time, we went out and were teachers with the Navajo people. And so we were I was teacher missionary, and she was a secretary missionary. Sometimes she would type as high as 35 pages typing in a day, plus take care of all the kids. She was one hard worker. But we would be out there at the mission, and so once a year, we'd take a month, and we'd take off on buses. And I don't know how much Robin remembers, but there were many, many hours we spent on buses. And our very first bus trip we took, they had a deal on the buses, Greyhound and Trailway. If you spent $100, you could ride as many buses that month as you could. You could go anywhere you wanted to go, and you could ride anywhere. And you had a pass, and you could get on Trailway or Greyhound. And we took advantage of it. And we rode buses that whole month. We went to 10 different churches. We traveled over 5,000 miles. Wow. You better believe we got our $100 worth. And the poor little kids, they had to go along with us. But it worked great. It really did. And finally, when our boy got old enough to drive, he was so anxious to drive. He couldn't wait to drive. And we had a nice little car, no air conditioner or anything like that, but we had this nice little car. He couldn't wait to get in there and drive. Well, we drove a whole month. And there again, we went over 5,000 miles. We got back home and unloaded the car, and Dee Dee turned around and said, "Dale, we've got to drive down to the store and get food." And he said, "Mom, I have driven so much, I dream I have my hands on that wheel. I don't want to drive another mile." And she said, "If you want to eat, you better drive." But it was so, I could just tell you time after time after time how God prepared. I went, like I said, went to the School for the Blind, and I used to say all the time, I'll never marry a blind girl. But I saw a lot of the blind girls, and especially the girls, they just sit around. They didn't learn hardly. They had a home ec class and all, but it was just kind of general stuff, and they really didn't learn how to cook much, and they didn't learn how to do much of anything like that, and didn't get out and run around, didn't do much of nothing, and like, now I'll never marry a blind girl. So when I went to college, I dated nothing but sighted girls. No, you ever believe that? But when I met my Dee Dee, I found out this girl, she got around. Honestly, I could go up to Chicago, and I actually did this. I'd go up to Chicago, I'd call her, and I'd say, "Dee Dee, I'm down here, South Chicago," and I didn't tell her I was down there visiting some more girls, but she found out later. But I said, "I'd like to come and visit you." She'd tell me what buses to catch and all that kind of stuff, and she'd tell me what streets I had to be on and all this, and she took buses, and she went to work, and she was a medical typist. She could type 75 words a minute on those old typewriters.
Clunkers.
She was fast.
Old time.
And
Clunkers. Yeah.
needless to say, this girl's different. real different. That was great. And so we all through college and all, and the whole thing's got there's wild stories about the whole thing. How we met and all this stuff, and wrote back and forth, and we made tapes back and forth and all that kind of thing. Got to know each other pretty well, but didn't want to get married till I got my first job, and I finally did. I was teaching 33rd graders in a little tiny town, and superintendent, he called me and he said, well, this college, Missouri University, says you can teach. He said, I don't know how in the world a blind person is going to teach 33rd graders. And he said, but the school says you can. He said, would you be willing to come down for an interview? And I said, sure would. And he said, how are you going to get here? And I said, Trailways bus. And he said, you going to get here by yourself? And I said, yep. He didn't know I'd been riding buses since I was 10, so but no big deal. So I got down there and sat in his office, and he said, well, I'm just going to tell you, I don't know how being a blind you're going to teach 33rd graders. He said, so I'm going to make you a deal. Like, oh, you're going to do me a favor, huh? He said, I want you to teach for a month, and at the end of the month, if you see you can't handle it, I want you to be man enough to come up and tell me I can't do this. He said, by that time it'll give me enough time to find another teacher. And I said, well, I'll make that deal, but I got a part of that deal too. He said, what's that? And I said, well, at the end of the month, if you don't get complaints from the parents, you don't get complaints from the principal, and if I tell you I can teach this class, I've got this job. And he said, that's a deal. I said, okay. So, and then I told him, I said, I want to tell you, well, finally, a month went by, and I went and sat down, and I said, any complaints? No complaints. I said, I got the job, right? He said, you sure do. I said, good, I'm getting married. So, and I could tell you so many good stories about these little third graders, how they tried so hard. They figured, hey, I got a blind teacher. I can do anything I want. I had so much fun with those kids because they didn't realize God had already prepared me, because I was a little scoundrel when I was a kid, and I pulled all kinds of things on my teachers. And so every time they got ready to pull stuff, it's stuff I had already done. And like, for instance, there would be, the very first day I was there, I had it all down in Braille, read off all the names, and there was one kid missing, a little guy named Michael. He was missing. I thought, I wonder how he talked his parents out letting him out of school the first day. Well, what I didn't know was he was down there, he and his parents were down there talking to the principal. And you know how so many of the parents now think, my kid's an angel. Well, these people were very realistic, and they said, principal, you know what my boy's like. He is gonna drive everybody nuts in there with a blind teacher. And the principal finally talked him into saying, give him a few days in there. And if he can't, if it's not gonna work, we'll put him in a different class. Well, okay. So he comes walking in late. And the door opened and all, and I said, well, hi, Mike, come on, sit down. And he goes and sits down, and I'm talking away, telling him, hey, when you're in school, you work hard. When you're in recess, we play hard. I said, I'll be out there playing with you, and we'll play hard. But every time you're in class, you're going to work hard. Well, that kid almost not much more than got sit down, and I heard two little empty shoes go plunk, plunk on the floor. He's ready to move already. And so, act like it paid no attention at all. And that was hard because I think he thought, well, I don't know whether he can see very much at all. I'm scared to just walk, even on soft feet. So he got down and crawled on his hands and knees, made more noise than ever. And it was hard not to sit there and laugh at him. But I kept my face the other way, and I kind of like I wasn't paying any attention. And of course, the whole class was just dead quiet, watching to see what was going to happen. And he goes crawling, and he crawled over to the wall, and he's crawling up along the wall, and he gets up and he puts his hand on this big old brass knob, and it goes clink. And I said, okay, Mike, game's over. Go back to your seat. And he goes, huh? And then that started it all off. And I mean, kids tried everything. They tried passing notes. They tried, I mean, everything kids do. Shoot rubber bands, they don't. And I'd catch them at it. And I can tell you more about all that. But and they'd get me out at recess and they'd say, how did you know Charlie shot a rubber band? How did you know I passed the note over to Christine? And I said, you think I'm going to tell you? I'm not going to tell you how I know. Why not? Because then you'll know how I know it, and then you'll change everything. Hey, I've been a kid myself. I know what I'm doing. So they all try to guess, how did you know that? And it was so much fun. We had a ball. And so that was my first teaching 33rd graders. I loved it. They were just great. And anyway, but see, God prepared me for that way ahead of time. Because I had done a lot of shenanigans myself, and I always did love kids. Even when I was in junior high, they let me go back and work with the grade school kids and teach them math and teach them all kinds of different blind skills and all that kind of thing. And I'm going to show you another example. Y'all don't know it, but you can hear walls. You can hear posts. And you can hear things that don't move at all. You don't know that, but you can. But we people that can't see, we know that. And I'm going to show you how to. But when I was about 4 years old, we lived out on a farm. And we had to go out to the outhouse. Well, I had to walk down the path past the smokehouse, and then down, and then not too close to the brooder house. We had a lot of baby chicks, and then go around to the outhouse door. And I found out, and I loved those baby chicks. I used to love to go and I'm gonna sneak over and play around with baby chicks a little bit. I got to walking over there, and of course I was barefoot. Ooh, I stepped on a lot of stickers, and I was like, man, I didn't know there were stickers over there. And so I found out that every time I couldn't tell what was happening exactly. I couldn't tell you, but I could hear when it got close to the chicken house wall, and I knew how close to get without hitting the thorns. And so I started learning that I could tell when I was close to a wall. And okay. So I started learning all that, just kind of experience, And so I'm going to show you the same thing. And later on, I taught older people that were losing their sight, and I would teach them how they could hear objects that they didn't know they could hear. So even though you're not losing your sight, hopefully, I'm going to teach you how that you can hear things that you didn't know you could hear. If you take a big old sheet, like a cookie sheet, or maybe an open magazine, or something, a nice big open book, and you hold it out here in front of you like this, close your eyes, and then you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. As you bring it towards you, you'll hear that book coming. You'll hear it coming towards you, because your voice will bounce off of it and it comes back. And that's called echo perception, echolocation. People try to say they feel the pressure on their face, but that's not true. If you take little flaps, and I've done this, take little flaps and put in front of their ears like this, they'll run right into a wall. They can't hear it because you can't. The sound of the wall doesn't come back to their ears; it's blocked off. And I even did some research papers on that in college. But anyway, if you try that and get in a nice quiet place, and you bring that book towards you like this, and you're counting out nice and loud, your voice will bounce off, come back to you. You can bring it over here to the side, bring it over to this side. You'll hear all the difference. You'll hear it. And we use that when we're walking. walk along, and if you're, I carry a cane with me when I'm outdoors all the time, and you tap on the pavement, that kind of thing, and, or you make a little noise, you know,